Have you ever felt that pang in your chest when you watch her talking to someone else, while you stand there, invisible, like a ghost condemned to observe? That knot in your throat when she tells you you're such a great friend, while inside, you're tearing yourself apart. It's not a coincidence. You're trapped in a game whose rules you were never taught, following a map that leads you to the same cliff over and over again. What I'm about to reveal to you challenges everything you think you know about female attraction, an ancient code that only 3% of men are aware of. It's not manipulation, it's a deep understanding of the psychology that activates primal desire. If this has already made you think for a second, like this now, because what you're about to hear could revolutionize every interaction you have with women from here on out. Get ready to discover the silent method, 4 pillars that will transform your presence from invisible to unforgettable. Let's journey together toward the truth no one dares to tell you. From childhood, you've been programmed for emotional failure. Every romantic movie, every maternal piece of advice, every relationship expert sold you the same lie. Be kind, attentive, available, and she'll fall head over heels. You bought that expensive cologne believing the scent would give you confidence. You responded to her messages instantly, thinking constant availability showed genuine interest. You gave her costly gifts, assuming money buys affection. And where did all that lead you? Straight to the friend zone, that emotional limbo where good intentions turn into romantic invisibility. That space where she calls you to cry about the jerk she actually desires, while you, with your heart bleeding, feign understanding as you're tearing yourself apart inside from helplessness. The brutal truth no one tells you is that female attraction doesn't happen on a conscious level. It's not a rational decision based on a list of admirable qualities. It's a primitive, ancient response that occurs in the deepest layers of the brain, where decisions are already made before the conscious mind even registers them. Think about it. Have you ever wondered why that guy, who isn't even that handsome, sweeps them all off their feet? Why they gravitate toward him like planets around the sun? The answer defies all romantic logic. He possesses something that goes beyond pretty words and pleasing gestures. He has a deep understanding that desire is activated in the subconscious, not through rationality. Society programmed you to fail from the start. It told you, be a good guy, as if that were enough to awaken the primal fire of female desire. And don't get me wrong, being respectful and kind is fundamental to being a good human being. But those qualities, isolated from other more powerful and primal elements, don't create that magnetic attraction that makes a woman unable to get you out of her mind. Do you know what does create it? Emotional tension, calculated mystery, the feeling that there's something about you she can't quite figure out, that element of controlled danger that activates her deepest instincts. When you're predictable, when every action you take can be anticipated, when there's no surprise or intrigue in your presence, you become invisible to her emotional radar. You become part of the scenery, emotional furniture, present but ignored, seen but not desired. Women don't consciously choose who they fall in love with. Their primitive brain, that ancient part from caveman times, makes that decision for them. And that primitive brain isn't impressed by flowers or expensive dinners. It's not swayed by romantic gestures pulled from movies. It's activated by signals of value, social dominance, and the ability to protect and lead. For over 10 years, I've studied these dynamics on the battlefield of human interactions. I've observed patterns, identified emotional triggers, and discovered what works and what miserably falls apart. And what I found contradicts everything preached by the relationship experts who swarm around, selling sweet but ineffective advice. The most unsettling paradox, the one that defies all traditional romantic logic, is this: the less you need her, the more she'll desire you. This goes against all emotional intuition, but it's a psychological truth as solid as the laws of physics. Have you ever noticed how women seem to gravitate toward men who don't desperately chase them? Toward those who have options, who don't need constant validation, who possess their own center of gravity? It's not a coincidence. It's a reflection of an evolutionary truth. We value what is scarce, what isn't guaranteed, what requires effort to obtain. The illusion they sold you is that by being complacent and predictable, you'd win her heart. The reality is that this behavior makes you invisible. You awaken nothing in her because you represent no challenge, no mystery, no emotional adventure. To break this cycle of failure, you need to understand and apply the 4 pillars of the silent method that I'm about to reveal to you. It's not about becoming someone you're not. It's about awakening dormant aspects of your masculinity that society taught you to repress. It's about understanding the silent language of desire and speaking it fluently. True attraction isn't built with pretty words or expensive gifts. It's built with magnetic presence, with calculated mystery, with the ability to create emotional tension that keeps vibrating in her mind long after you're gone. It's the art of becoming a question she needs to answer, an enigma she can't easily decipher. And that art, that mastery in the silent game of seduction, begins with the first pillar we're about to explore: magnetic movement, the art of approach that breaks all established patterns and awakens something primal in her from the very first instant. There's a language older than words, a primitive code that speaks directly to the limbic brain, that reptilian part that makes decisions before the conscious mind even knows. It's the language of the body, of energy, of the unsaid, and it's precisely in this invisible realm that the true battles of attraction are fought. While you struggle to find the perfect words, to construct logical arguments for why you should be together, she has already decided. Her body has already read your energy, scanned your presence, measured your value in that silent market of subconscious signals that most men don't even know exists. Research in evolutionary psychology reveals an uncomfortable truth. 93% of human communication is nonverbal, which means that while you focus on that 7% of words, she's absorbing an entire universe of information through your posture, your tone of voice, the steadiness of your gaze, the cadence of your movements, every micro-expression, every nervous adjustment, every insecure blink is screaming truths your words try to hide. Why do you think you feel that disconnect when you send perfectly crafted text messages, but then, face to face, everything falls apart? Because in person, you can't hide that silent code. You can't fake energetic congruence. She perceives the dissonance between your confident words and your trembling energy. The brutal truth is that women aren't attracted to the words you say, but to the energy you emanate. A man can be physically ordinary, can dress without style, can lack obvious social status, but if he masters the silent code, if his presence speaks the primitive language of inherent value, women perceive it instantly. They feel something they can't rationally explain, that magnetic attraction that defies all superficial logic. Think about the last time you walked into a room and felt someone's presence without even seeing them. That feeling that there's someone important, someone who commands attention without asking for it. That's not coincidence or magic. It's mastery of the silent code. It's the projection of an energy that doesn't ask permission to exist, that doesn't beg for attention, that simply is. The fundamental problem with most modern men is that they've been domesticated into energetic invisibility. They've learned to shrink, to apologize for their presence, to minimize their impact. They walk as if asking the ground for permission to step on it. They speak as if they fear their words will take up too much space. They look as if eye contact were an unforgivable transgression. And then they wonder why they're transparent to the women they're genuinely interested in. Reclaiming your magnetic power begins with understanding that your body is constantly communicating, whether you're aware of it or not. Every hurried breath conveys anxiety. Every slumped shoulder projects defeat. Every nervous movement screams insecurity. Your body is a constant transmitter, and women are exquisitely calibrated receivers to pick up on these signals. The good news is that you can reprogram this body language. You can recalibrate your silent code to project presence, confidence, and inherent value. It's not about faking or acting, but about unlocking aspects of yourself that have been suppressed by years of social conditioning. Start with posture. Your shoulders shouldn't be hunched as if you're carrying the weight of anticipated rejection, but relaxed and back, open as if you're ready to receive what life offers you. Your chest doesn't sink. It expands slightly with each conscious breath. Your head doesn't bow submissively. It stays aligned with your spine, as if an invisible force were pulling a string attached to the crown of your skull. Eye contact is where most fail miserably. They glance furtively, like emotional thieves fearing discovery. Or worse, they fixate with desperate intensity, as if wanting to absorb every detail of her for fear it's their only chance. Magnetic eye contact is steady but not invasive. It's warm but not desperate. It's as if you're looking through her, as if you see something beyond her physical appearance, something other men can't perceive. And then there's the voice, that powerful instrument most men squander. They speak quickly, with an upward inflection as if every statement were a question asking for approval. The man who masters the silent code speaks slower, with deliberate cadence, with a downward tonality that conveys certainty. He doesn't raise his volume to be heard. He creates silence around him that makes others lean in to listen. The magnetic man's movements are economical, precise, intentional. There are no nervous gestures or constant adjustments. Every movement has purpose, as if time and space were valuable resources, not to be wasted on superfluous actions. This economy of movement conveys control, self-mastery, and by extension, the ability to dominate his environment. Breathing, that automatic process we rarely notice, is perhaps the most revealing component of the silent code. The anxious man breathes shallowly, rapidly from the chest, like a cornered animal ready to flee. The centered man breathes deeply from the diaphragm, with a steady rhythm that conveys emotional stability and groundedness. These elements of the silent code aren't mere presentation tricks. They are external manifestations of a fundamental internal shift. Because the real secret is this: you can't fake the silent code for long. Eventually, your true internal state will leak through the cracks of any mask you try to maintain. That's why the real work begins within, with the reconfiguration of your limiting beliefs, with the healing of old emotional wounds, with the cultivation of a genuine sense of sufficiency that doesn't depend on external validation. When you feel whole within yourself, your body naturally transmits it without conscious effort. This is the true power of the silent code. It's not something you do, it's something you are. It's not a technique you apply, it's a frequency you emit. And when you master this frequency, when your presence speaks for itself, you're ready to implement the first active pillar of the method, magnetic movement that will revolutionize the way you approach her from the very first instant. True seduction doesn't begin with a simple, polite hello that vanishes into the air without a trace. It begins with a rupture, a break from the expected, a spark in the silence that awakens something dormant within her. This is the first pillar of the method, magnetic movement, the art of approach that transcends the ordinary and creates an indelible impression from the very first moment. Forget everything you were told about traditional introductions. Forget that robotic, "How are you?" that dies the moment it's uttered. That predictable first approach that immediately classifies you as just another face in the crowd, as another generic man in the endless procession of forgettable suitors who have passed through her life. The first move isn't about being nice or harmless. It's about taking control of the emotional rhythm from the first second. It's about establishing that you're not just another one in the herd of predictable men who approach her with the same tired lines and the same old approaches she's heard 1,000 times before. Imagine approaching her, but instead of being predictable like everyone else, you say something like, "You look like someone who hates superficial conversations, but secretly loves chaos." In that moment, something changes in her expression. She pauses, blinks. Her brain activates like an engine that just received high-octane fuel. Why does this happen? Because you've interrupted her automatic pattern, that mental filter programmed to automatically dismiss generic men who approach her. In that instant, you're no longer one of them. You've piqued her curiosity, and curiosity is the gateway drug to desire. This is what most men never understand. The first line is the foundation of the entire game that follows. It's like the opening move in chess. It sets the tempo for the whole match. It defines the emotional battlefield. If you open weakly with something common and predictable, you've already put yourself on the defensive. You'll spend the rest of the interaction chasing her, trying to regain lost ground. But if you open strong with something unexpected, poetic or slightly absurd, you gain the frame advantage. Now she's in your world, playing by your rules. This is movement. It's not about exactly what you say. It's about how sharply you cut through the everyday noise. It's about projecting a clear psychological signal. I'm not here to desperately impress you. I'm here to see if you're worth the game. And this isn't just verbal, it's energetic. It's your tone, your timing, the deliberate calm in your way of speaking, that slight smile as if you already know how this will all end. Men who approach with high-frequency, predictable lines are dismissed by her subconscious in seconds. But a man who walks with a sense of controlled unpredictability, he becomes a question she wants to answer. Never forget this. Women are attracted to what they don't immediately understand. So be the enigma, be the rupture, be the man who speaks not to impress with pretty words, but to provoke something within her that she had forgotten she could feel. Magnetic movement has three essential components: pattern interruption, emotional provocation, and strategic withdrawal. Each plays a crucial role in that initial dance that will determine if you're classified as just another guy or as someone I need to know better. Pattern interruption is the art of breaking her expectations in an intriguing way. If she expects a superficial compliment about her appearance, surprise her with an observation about the energy she projects. If she expects a predictable question about her job or studies, instead, question something about her unfulfilled dreams or secret fears. Interruption creates a momentary void where her usual defenses don't know how to respond, and in that space, intrigue is born. Emotional provocation goes a step further. It's not enough to surprise her mind. You must touch something within her, awaken an emotion that breaks the monotony of her everyday interactions. This can be through a slightly challenging observation, a question no one dares to ask, or an assertion that reveals you see beyond the social mask she presents to the world. It could be something as simple as, "I'm curious, do you always put up that invisible barrier when someone new approaches, or only when you sense they might be interesting?" This phrase contains a subtle challenge, an acknowledgement of her defenses, and at the same time implies you're perceptive enough to notice them. It's not aggressive or disrespectful. It's provocative in the deepest sense. It evokes an emotional response, not just an intellectual one. And finally, strategic withdrawal. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive element of magnetic movement. Just when you've created that initial space of connection, when you've piqued her curiosity and possibly her interest, you take a step back. Not literally, but energetically. You change the subject, divert attention, or even physically move away for a moment. This withdrawal creates a void she will instinctively want to fill. You've brought her to the edge of something intriguing and then pulled back, leaving her with the feeling of, what just happened? This technique activates the chase instinct that is rarely awakened in women, because most men are too busy desperately pursuing. Magnetic movement requires practice, calibration, and authenticity. It's not a rigid script you apply mechanically, but a principle you adapt to your unique personality and each specific situation. What works in a nightclub might be different from what works in a quiet bookstore, but the underlying principle remains the same. Interrupt, provoke, withdraw. The key to mastering this pillar is acute observation. Before approaching, observe. Look for details others would overlook. Perceive her body language, her personal style, the books she reads, the music she listens to, any detail that gives you a window into her inner world. Then, use that information not to flatter her superficially, but to establish a connection that shows you see beyond the obvious. Magnetic movement, when executed with mastery, completely changes the traditional dynamic of approach. You're no longer just one of many men trying to get her attention. You become someone who captured her attention without even seeming to try. You don't chase, you attract. You don't beg for attention, you generate it naturally. You don't try to impress, you impact. When you master this first pillar, you lay the groundwork for everything that follows. You've created the space for curiosity to flourish, planted the seed of intrigue, and established that you operate under different rules. Now, you're ready for the second fundamental pillar, the unshakable attitude that will transform that initial curiosity into sustained magnetic attraction. This is where the entire foundation of attraction begins to harden into something unshakable, something untouchable, something extraordinarily rare in the modern world. The second pillar of the method, the unshakable attitude, that internal state that transforms your presence from common to magnetic without the need for words. True confidence isn't what you say, it's what you don't need to say. You see, she perceives everything before you open your mouth. She reads your essence. She observes how you sit, how long you maintain eye contact, whether your presence fills the room or begs for space. True confidence is silent. It walks without announcing itself, speaks slowly, moves with certainty, and above all, doesn't fear loss. That's the attitude you need to embody. I don't need you, but I'm not afraid of you either. This is the stance that flips the entire power dynamic on its head. And once you learn it, she starts qualifying herself to you instead of you having to prove your worth to her. Let me make it visual so you understand completely. Think about the last time you walked into a car showroom. The salesperson who hovered over you, stuck to you like a shadow, constantly asking, "Do you like it? Do you want to test drive it?" What do you think? He radiated a desperation you could smell, and you instantly had the upper hand because his neediness diminished his value in your eyes. Now imagine another salesperson. He calmly greets you, elegantly shows you the car, then quietly withdraws. He knows what he's offering. He knows you'll feel it if it's right for you. Suddenly you feel the need to prove you're worthy of the deal. You start asking questions. You start justifying your interest. It's exactly the same in seduction. When you demonstrate that your life is complete, rich in purpose, full of joy, anchored in strength, with or without her, you become the prize, not the desperate hunter, not the emotional beggar pleading for attention. And women don't chase men they pity. They chase men they respect, men who represent something they desire to achieve or experience. How do you radiate this attitude through your body? Because words lie, but energy never lies. Shoulders relaxed, yet strong. Upright posture that speaks of dignity. Unshakable eye contact that doesn't apologize for existing. Slow, steady breathing. Precise and intentional movements as if you owned time itself. No trembling hands. No nervously bouncing legs. No fast, anxious speech. You speak as if you trust your silence, because studies show that over 90% of communication is nonverbal. She doesn't just hear you. She feels you in every fiber of her being. And if your energy says, "Please love me," she'll pull away, even if your words say something completely different. But if your presence says, "You're welcome to join me, but I won't bend over backwards for approval," she leans into you because detachment is intoxicating. It's addictive. It's what most men never manage to convey. This is the paradox that changes everything. The less you seek validation, the more your value multiplies in her eyes. But let's be clear, an unshakable attitude isn't arrogance. Arrogance is a mask that hides insecurity. It's loud. It needs to announce itself. It needs constant confirmation. True confidence is quiet. It doesn't need to prove itself. It simply is. Arrogance repels. Genuine confidence attracts. This unshakable attitude is built upon 4 internal pillars: self-determination, self-acceptance, absence of neediness, and assumption of abundance. Self-determination means you define your worth, not external circumstances, not others' opinions, not her reactions to you. Your sense of self-worth is unshakable because it comes from within. It doesn't depend on external validation. If she responds well, great. If not, her loss, not yours. This mindset is reflected in every interaction you have. Self-acceptance means embracing both your strengths and your weaknesses unapologetically. You don't try to hide your imperfections. You integrate them as part of who you are. This authenticity is magnetic because it's extraordinarily rare in a world where most people live trying to project a perfect image they know is false. Absence of neediness means exactly that. You don't need her approval, her attention, her validation to feel complete. It doesn't mean you don't desire or appreciate her, but that your emotional well-being doesn't depend on getting it. This stance creates a magnetic field around you because it represents emotional freedom, something many people yearn for but few possess. And finally, the assumption of abundance. You live and act from the internal certainty that there are multiple opportunities in your life, multiple potential connections, multiple sources of happiness and fulfillment. You don't cling to one specific interaction with desperation because you know that abundance is your natural state. This mindset eliminates that vibration of scarcity that repels genuine attraction. These 4 internal components, when consciously cultivated, naturally generate that unshakable attitude that manifests in your body language, your tone of Voice, your speaking rhythm, the quality of your presence. The big secret no one tells you is that this attitude isn't about manipulation or artificial techniques. It's about healing the internal wounds that make you seek external validation. It's about reconnecting with your personal power that has always been there, but has been buried under layers of social conditioning and painful experiences. The unshakable attitude has a transformative effect on attraction dynamics. When you truly embody it, the game changes completely. You're no longer trying to convince her to choose you. You're calmly evaluating whether she meets your standards. You're no longer anxious to impress. You're present, observing if there's an authentic connection worth exploring. This inversion of the traditional dynamic creates irresistible magnetic tension. She feels she has to earn your genuine interest, that she has to qualify for your full attention, and that subliminal challenge awakens something primal in her. The desire to be chosen by a man who has options, by a man who doesn't settle for less than he deserves. The beautiful irony is that this attitude can only be authentic when you truly don't need a specific outcome. When you've done the inner work to feel complete in your own company. When you've cultivated a life rich in meaning, purpose, and connections. When you've healed that abandonment wound that makes you desperately chase validation. That's why the unshakable attitude isn't something you can fake for long. Eventually, the mask cracks, and the inner truth leaks through. The real work is in transforming your relationship with yourself, in reclaiming that personal power that has always been yours, but which you've surrendered by seeking external approval. When you master this second pillar, you're ready to implement the third, perhaps the most counterintuitive of all, the art of absence, the paradoxical power of creating space for desire to flourish in the void you leave behind. This is the most counterintuitive of all the pillars, the seductive art of stepping back right at the peak of connection. Not because you don't care, but because you understand one of the most powerful truths about female desire. Longing creates obsession. Void generates desperate yearning. You know that perfect moment when conversation flows effortlessly, when smiles come naturally, when she's completely present with you, absorbed in your presence, hanging on your every word. That's not the time to keep going and squeeze every last drop out of that connection. That's the time to leave, to disappear, just when everything feels most alive and promising. Yes, exactly. At the absolute peak, just when it feels most electric and full of possibilities. You simply say, "I'd love to stay longer, but I have to go. Let's pick this up another time." What happens next isn't logical. It's entirely chemical and primitive. Her brain releases a significant amount of dopamine, and then you disappear. You've just become the episode that ends on a cliffhanger, the song that cuts off at the best part, the book that closes just as the plot gets interesting. Think of the last addictive series you watched. It didn't explain everything. It didn't resolve all the plot lines. It left you hungry for more. That's what you need to become. Not the 3-hour movie that drags on until everyone loses interest, but the tense, suspense-filled episode that leaves her breathless and counting down the days until the next season. This means you don't reply the moment she texts you. You don't answer every call as if you were waiting by the phone. You live your life. You move through your world like a man on a mission. A man who has options, purpose, his own gravity. Because when she notices your absence, her emotional radar activates in a way she can't control. Where are you? Who are you with? Why haven't you replied? And in that moment, she's not just thinking about you. She's feeling you. Now you're in her mind, playing on a loop, replaying your voice, rereading your last text as if it were a secret code she needs to decipher. This is the crucial shift when she starts to chase, not out of strategy, but out of tension, unresolved emotion, an urgent longing for resolution. That's what most men never understand. They stay too long, reply too fast, eliminate all tension, and in doing so, kill desire in its cradle. But you will learn to gracefully walk away, to leave her with a taste, not the full meal, to create silences that resonate louder than words, because that is the most beautiful and cruel paradox. The less she has of you, the more she'll need you. This isn't blind arrogance. It's not calculated manipulation. This is pure psychology applied with mastery, and the man who masters it doesn't chase like a desperate predator. He attracts by letting go, he pulls by releasing, he conquers by withdrawing at the perfect moment. The art of absence, manifests on three distinct levels: physical, digital, and emotional. Each has its own rhythm and purpose in the dance of seduction. Physical absence is the most evident. It's the art of leaving when the connection is at its peak, of ending the encounter at the moment of highest energy. It's also the art of not always being available, of having a life rich in activities and connections that don't depend on her. You don't cancel plans with friends just because she wants to see you. You don't rearrange your entire schedule to accommodate her. Your time is valuable, and you demonstrate it with your actions, not your words. Digital absence is increasingly crucial in the modern era. You don't reply instantly to every message. You're not constantly checking her social media updates. You're not the first to like every photo she posts. Your digital life projects the same as your real life. A busy, focused, purposeful man who isn't living for virtual validation. But perhaps the most powerful and subtle form is intermittent emotional absence. It's not about constant coldness, but about rhythmic variation in the emotional intensity you project. There are moments of deep connection, of total presence, of genuine intimacy, followed by periods where you withdraw to your center, where you maintain a certain emotional distance, where you don't share everything you feel. This oscillation creates an addictive pattern. Dopamine in her brain isn't released with constant reward, but with unpredictable reward. When she's never completely sure which version of you she'll encounter, each interaction maintains that element of novelty, discovery, and excitement that prevents emotional habituation. The fatal mistake most men make is confusing intensity with intimacy. They believe that being constantly available, emotionally exposed, sharing every thought and feeling will create deep connection. What it actually creates is saturation, predictability, and eventually, boredom. Female desire doesn't flourish in absolute certainty. It blossoms in that space between certainty and doubt, in that exquisite tension between the known and the mysterious, between what is possessed and what is longed for. That's why women lose interest in men who are too nice, too available, too predictable, not because they wish to be mistreated, but because they crave the emotional tension that keeps desire alive. Applying the art of absence requires intuition, timing, and self-control. It's not a rigid formula, but a flexible principle you adapt to each specific situation. Too much absence and the connection dies. Too little, and the tension is never created. The perfect balance is in keeping her in that state of perpetual longing, where she has enough of you to know you're real, but never so much that she takes you for granted. The beauty of this pillar is that it doesn't require constant effort. In fact, it requires the opposite, the ability to let go, to trust the process, to allow the void to do the work for you. In a world where everyone is desperately trying to be seen, remembered, validated, your ability to strategically withdraw makes you a magnetic anomaly. And while she wonders where you are, who you're with, when you'll appear again, her mind is working for you, creating narratives, amplifying qualities, idealizing aspects of you that you may not even possess. Your absence becomes a blank screen onto which she projects her deepest desires. When you master this third pillar, you create the perfect space for the fourth and final element: calculated audacity, the art of taking decisive action at the precise moment, closing the circle that began with the initial magnetic movement, taking initiative and escalating the interaction when necessary, without doubts that paralyze you. This is the moment of truth where most men fail miserably, where all previous pillars collapse if you don't have the courage to act. You created attraction, built emotional tension, played the game of detachment. Now you need to act decisively. And this is where fear appears in all its ugliness. The fear of rejection, the fear of ruining everything you've built, the fear of being seen as invasive or inappropriate. But let me tell you a secret that will transform your perspective forever. Women want you to take the initiative. They fantasize about a man who knows what he wants and isn't afraid to go for it without apologizing for his masculinity. Almost no one realizes this, but hesitation kills more opportunities than rejection itself. When you feel the moment is right, act without asking permission, without asking if you can. You read her signals and move forward with the confidence of someone who understands the silent language of desire. It could be taking her hand as you walk. It could be pulling her closer during a conversation. It could be that kiss at the perfect moment when silence speaks louder than 1,000 words. Calculated audacity is what separates men from boys playing at being men. It's what makes her mention you to her friends the next day. It's what creates impactful memories she can't forget, even if she wanted to. Are you ready for this level of intensity and commitment? Calculated audacity has three fundamental elements: precise signal reading, impeccable timing, and hesitation-free execution. Each is essential for transforming latent attraction into tangible connection. Signal reading is an art in itself. Women rarely verbalize their desire directly. They communicate it through a subtle language many men don't know how to interpret. Sustained eye contact, voluntary physical proximity, the accidental touch, amplified laughter, playing with her hair, the way her body turns towards you. These are the hieroglyphs of female desire you must learn to decipher. An interested woman creates opportunities for physical contact. She doesn't pull away when your knee touches hers under the table. She sits closer. Then necessary, she finds reasons to touch you as she talks. Her body is sending messages her mouth may never utter, but they are there for whoever knows how to read them. Impeccable timing is the difference between a move that electrifies her and one that makes her uncomfortable. It's not just about what you do, but when you do it. The perfect moment arises when you've created enough emotional tension, when the conversation reaches that point where words are no longer necessary, when there's the charged silence begging to be filled with action, not more words. Many men ruin perfect opportunities because they talk too much, because they fill every silence with nervous words, because they don't recognize those windows of opportunity that open briefly and then close. Calculated audacity requires strategic patience. Observe, feel the rhythm of the interaction, and act precisely when the energy calls for it. And finally, hesitation-free execution. Once you decide to act, you do so with fluidity, with confidence, with clear intentionality. There's no wavering, no half-hearted moves, no nervous retreats. Your body language, your gaze, your movements, everything communicates certainty. If you're going to kiss her, you don't stop halfway, waiting for confirmation. You read the signals beforehand, trust your read, and act with conviction. If she's not receptive, you respect that immediately, but you don't apologize for taking the initiative. The difference between audacity and recklessness lies precisely in that ability to correctly read the situation. Calculated audacity extends beyond the physical realm. It also applies to verbal escalation, to those moments where you directly express your interest or intention, where you abandon ambiguities and clearly state what you want. Most men never reach this point. They remain in the safe zone of platonic interaction, waiting for her to somehow, magically, take the initiative. But women rarely take that step, not because they don't desire it, but because they instinctively respect the man who takes the risk of a direct declaration, who puts his ego on the line, who is willing to receive a rejection for the possibility of an authentic connection. When you express your desire unapologetically, without coercion, without expectations, but with absolute clarity, you create a moment of truth where there's no room for ambiguity. You could say something as simple as, "I like you, and I'm not interested in just being your friend. I want to see where this can go." This clarity is refreshing in a world of men who play endless games of vague hints. Audacity also means setting clear boundaries, communicating expectations, upholding your standards without aggression, but with unshakable firmness. It's the ability to say no when something doesn't align with your values, to walk away from situations that don't honor you, to maintain your integrity, even when it means losing an opportunity. This type of moral audacity is perhaps the most powerful form of all, because it communicates something profound about your character, that you are not a man driven by desperation, but by principles. And paradoxically, this willingness to lose her if your standards are not met makes her more determined to prove she is worthy of you. The man who masters calculated audacity understands a fundamental truth. Temporary rejection is infinitely preferable to eternal regret. The pain of no lasts days. The pain of what if can last a lifetime. Most men live with the ghost of missed opportunities, of moments where audacity failed them, where they were paralyzed by fear while someone else, perhaps less compatible but more decisive, took the step they didn't dare to take. Calculated audacity is, in its essence, the manifestation of masculine leadership in the context of intimacy. It's the recognition that, in the dance of seduction, someone must lead. Someone must assume the initial risk. Someone must create the space where passion can manifest without inhibitions. It's not about dominating, but about initiating. It's not about controlling, but about catalyzing. It's not about imposing, but about proposing with such confidence that acceptance seems like the only natural response. This is the culmination of the three previous pillars. Magnetic movement created initial interest. The unshakable attitude established your inherent value. The art of absence generated longing and tension. Now, calculated. Audacity transforms that accumulated tension into concrete action, closing the circle of effective seduction. When you integrate these four pillars into your life, you not only transform your ability to attract women, but you transform your relationship with your own masculinity. You rediscover aspects of yourself that modern society has tried to suppress, aspects that are not toxic or harmful, but essential for your authentic expression as a man. And most powerfully of all, these qualities aren't limited to seduction. They extend to every area of your life. You become a more decisive man in your career, clearer in your relationships, more aligned with your life's purpose. Because true seduction isn't something you do, it's something you are. The promise I made you at the beginning wasn't just about romantic conquests. It was about reclaiming your personal power, about awakening the man you've always been beneath layers of conditioning. That man who doesn't beg for approval, who doesn't fear loss, who acts with conviction while respecting others' boundaries. That man is you. It has always been you. And now you have the tools to awaken him definitively. The path we've just traveled together isn't just another seduction technique. It's an awakening. It's a scalpel that cuts through all the layers of social domestication to free the authentic man you've always been. That man who doesn't ask permission to exist, who doesn't apologize for his desire, who understands the silent language that speaks directly to the feminine soul. The question is no longer whether it works. The question is, will you have the courage to apply it? While you hesitate, while you procrastinate, while you overanalyze, other men are already using these four pillars and getting results that seem like magic to those who don't understand the underlying principles. The difference between the man women forget and the man who obsesses them isn't in his appearance, his status, or his wealth. It's in his deep understanding of these ancient truths we've explored. Whoever doesn't act now pays the price of a life of emotional mediocrity, of settling for scraps of affection when they could have the full feast. You belong to that select group that has had the courage to look beyond the conventional, to question everything you were taught about female attraction. Now take that knowledge to the world. Comment, "I seduce without saying a word," and join the silent brotherhood of men who have awakened. Remember, magnetic movement opens the door. The unshakable attitude establishes your value. The art of absence creates longing, and calculated audacity transforms everything into concrete action. This is your masculine legacy. Reclaiming it isn't optional. It's your birthright.